What up, and welcome to LSU Live. I'm your new host, Lewis Johnson. I want to thank the guys at the Voice of College Football for giving me this opportunity. And a quick shout out to Chris Sadler for all your help getting me on. And I also want to shout out Grant Shashery, your last host, and wish good luck to Grant up in North Carolina now, covering the North Carolina Tar Heels. And good luck up there with Belichick, the soap opera he has going on. But as for me, again, my name is Lewis Johnson. Been covering LSU since 2019 when I started my own site. 2023, I started to cover LSU for Last Word on College Football, where I write for them and still on the beat with Last Word. As far as my style of coverage, if you're looking for that seeing everything through purple and gold glasses, the pie in the sky kind of biased coverage. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm going to base all my opinions off of facts, results, but I'm not going to be overly critical. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get into our first show. And we want to go over defensive expectations for LSU and what we should expect in 2025. If you're covering the team, or if you're a fan of the team, you know that last year's results won't cut it. 2024 started off pretty decent. You saw some chinks in the armor early on. Then after the Texas A&M game, it kind of fell apart, and you really saw the weaknesses in the defense. So, should we expect better things, more the same? Let's see. Let's start with the coach. Defensive coordinator, Blake Baker. Baker's track record, I think, speaks for itself. When you look at Missouri the year before he came, Missouri was 106th in total defense in 2021. 2022, Baker comes as the safeties coach. He ends up getting the head defensive coordinator job, and they improved to 34th in the nation in total defense. So that's like 70 spots better than when they were the year before. He comes to LSU, and you get the same results. People forget about how bad that LSU defense was in 2023. You had a historically good offense and a historically bad defense. So LSU is 108th in total defense. In 2023, Blake Baker comes, they move up to 61st. So you got almost 50 spots that they improved. So even though that defense was kind of frustrating to watch last year, you still had a heck of an improvement from one year to the next. And that was his first year in the system. So what should we expect in year two? So LSU, obviously, they added a lot of talent in year two for Blake Baker through the transfer portal and through high school recruiting. You got five-star recruiting DJ Pickett at corner. You got the best safety that was available this spring from the transfer portal in A.J. Halsey, the best defensive tackle available this spring, and Bernard Gooden out of UCF. So now not only do you have Blake Baker in his second year at the helm, you also have more weapons, more talent, and more depth for him to work with, more tools. But everything starts, and this will be an ongoing theme with me when we're talking ball, it's all going to start up front. And if you're not strong enough at D tackle, it doesn't. It's going to affect your entire defense, and that was one of the bigger problems in last year's season. One thing that you look at is it's not often where you're going to be dependent on true freshmen on the interior of your defensive line. It's not ideal, but it's kind of what LSU got itself into, and it's kind of reminiscent of back in 2014 when you had Devon Godchaux. He comes in as a defensive end. He bucks up. He tries to play D tackle. He's forced into action because of the lack of depth. And next thing you know, you got Dak Prescott running for 1,000 yards in Tiger Stadium in one game. And of course, I'm exaggerating, but that's what it felt like if you're a fan of the team. But it's just an example of you just don't want to get yourself into a position where you're dependent on true freshmen in the trenches, offensive line or defensive line. And the way LSU got there is you had a transfer in Gio Paez from Wisconsin. He did what he could. He was serviceable, but serviceable isn't quite good enough at that position. You also had Javion Suggs, and Suggs was very disruptive as a 4-3 defensive tackle. He was quick, he could get in the backfield, but he's not your prototype run stopper. To show just how thin they were, LSU also played Paris Shand, who was naturally a defensive end, got snaps at defensive tackle. So what you end up leaning on is two freshmen and Ahmad Bro out of Ruston and Dominic McKinley out of Lafayette in Acadiana High School. Bro recently did an interview with, see the name of these guys? So it was G Sports he interviewed with, and he revealed that he came to campus in the 230, 235 range and added 50 pounds to get up in the 280 range before the season. He early enrolled in the spring, added 50 pounds. That's a lot. That's a lot to ask for as far as a guy coming and adding that kind of weight at that age. And as far as him keeping up with his functional strength, you can't just add the weight and say, oh, I'm 285 now. It's a difference between getting there and being as strong as you need to be. So kudos to Bro for buying in. It shows a lot of commitment to put on 50 pounds that fast. But it also speaks to the position he was put in. Dominic McKinley, the other true freshman, he came in with the 5-star rating. You know, everybody's expecting big things from him. But a lot of people didn't know that McKinley played hurt last year. He hurt his toe early in the season. So that's why you see him kind of in a rotational role earlier in the season. Later on in the season, you start seeing him get in the backfield, be more disruptive. And McKinley really came on. He ended up being LSU's second highest graded, as far as PFF goes, second highest graded D tackle behind Suggs last year, and that's as a true freshman. So you get those guys back. They're a year older. They're a year stronger. So you got to expect improvement from those two. But you can't forget about Jacoby and Guillory, who got hurt in the second game of the year. Guillory was a veteran. They were dependent on him. And he really came out with a solid game against USC. Guillory is your prototypical run stopper. He's big. He not only takes on blockers and occupies guys. Guillory pushed the pocket. He moves the line of scrimmage, and that's critical in the run game and in the defense as a whole. So hopefully you get Guillory back full strength, but you get him back to add depth. Like I said earlier, you got Bernard Gooden that you got from UCF, who will also add some depth. But Gooden is kind of on the smaller side. He's in that 285 range, so he'll probably help you a lot in the passing game. We'll see how much he can help in the run game. Speaking of the run game, LSU added some big-time transfers at the defensive end position at edge. You got Jack Pyburn out of Florida. So Pyburn doesn't have, I think, a sack in his career, but he's everything you want in a run defender because he's disciplined, he's strong, he plays hard, he's going to be where he's supposed to be. He's a very solid run defender, but you also got Patrick Payton from Florida State. So a combination of these guys, I'm not sure if you're better than you were last year. I think that Savion Jones and Braden Swinson were pretty underrated last year considering what they were able to do. Swinson had 8 sacks, 14 tackles for loss. And I really expected him to be drafted higher than he was, but he was a terror off the edge. But you do get a replacement in Patrick Payton. Payton also, he was hard to stop as a sophomore in 2023. Shoot, LSU couldn't block him. And he was looked at as a first-round pick, future first-round pick by a lot of people. But he had a dip last year, but to be fair to him, everybody on that Florida State team had a dip last year. So you get those two on the edge. You also got Jamari Butler from Nebraska, who will add some depth to that team in that position. But before we go too far, I want to go back to the defensive tackles. We can't forget about, you get Kyle Williams back as the coach for that position. And if there's anybody that we should expect to be able to get the most from that position, it's Williams. You got a guy that's a 13-year vet in the NFL, 6-time Pro Bowler. So there's nothing as far as the technical aspects of the game that he can't teach these guys. And he also has that personal relationship with Ahmad Bro as far as coaching him in high school and Ruston. So I can't leave Kyle Williams out. Now, back to the defensive ends. Yeah, you got good transfers in Butler and Pyburn and Peyton. But, we always get caught up in the new shiny things. We also have guys that are on the team that should and will contribute, like Gabe Relaford. Gabe Relaford came as a true freshman and got playing time last year on a loaded line. As far as the edge goes, you had Swinson, Jones, you had Parashan, who still played a little defensive end too, and Gabe Relaford managed to get himself in that rotation pretty firmly and also make an impact. He wasn't just on the field. You noticed when he was on the field. So as far as the front four goes, I think you got an improved unit. I think Blake Baker is going to feel a lot more confident about his options because you won't have a liability. And that's nothing against the guys from last year or that defense as a whole, but you can't afford to just have guys at those positions, especially at D tackle. You got to have difference makers. When you look at Georgia, you look at Texas, you look at Ohio State, you got difference makers at the defensive tackle position, and their defenses thrived off of those guys. On to the linebacker position. At linebacker, of course, you're bringing back Whit Weeks. Whit Weeks burst onto the scene last year. He didn't even start the whole year, but he still led the team in tackles. And not only did he lead the team in tackles with 130, that was 26 more tackles than the next guy behind him. So he came into his own. And the thing about Weeks is not only did he have a great year, he had a great year not really knowing his role. So he'll come in knowing where he stands on this defense, knowing what's expected of him. He's an established leader at this point. So we're expecting more big things from Whit Weeks, and we're hoping that he can come back full strength. But according to his statement at media days, it looks like he's going to be pretty much at full strength well before the season starts. Rehab is going well, so you're glad to get him back. Going along with Whit Weeks, you got Devon Keys. Devon Keys got on the field as a true freshman last year. Greg Penn was your starter. Towards the end of the year, you saw more and more Keys. Staff wanted to see what they had in him, and I think he did well in those cases. Devon Keys was an athletic guy, and just to show you an example of that, we're going to look at his play against Baylor in that Texas Bowl. Where he takes the interception, runs it back. Underrated part of this play is he takes the interception off a tip ball. So it's not as easy as it looks. The ball tip, he's able to track it. He catches it, runs it in. And, yeah, that's a quick play, but it just gives you a glimpse of fluid movement, playing in space. reflexes, instincts. I think Keys has promise, and we're expecting big things from him again this year too. The only issue I'm seeing with the linebacker group right now is probably the depth. You got guys, but you don't have a lot of proven guys behind Weeks and Keys. Uh, so you want to start with like Wes Weeks. He's an experienced guy. He'll help. And you also have from Manny, a second-year guy, and Tyler Singleton. Singleton was a pretty athletic guy. He was played safety in high school, was recruited as a linebacker, but we just haven't seen him. So he might be able to play, he might not, but we haven't seen enough to know. As far as a true freshman from this top 10 class that LSU had in 25, you got Charles Ross. And Charles Ross out of North Shore in Houston is your fastest linebacker to play last year. Ross ran a 10.3 in the 100 meter. And for my track guys, the true track heads, you might say, well, was it wind aided? Well, it doesn't matter to me. A 10.3, it's not enough wind in the world to make somebody that's not fast run a 10 anything. So Charles Ross will likely have an impact on this group, but also Jaden Breaker. Breaker, the true freshman out of South Carolina, and he'll come in a little bit bigger than Charles Ross. Ross was 195. He's listed at 225 now on the LSU website. But Breaker is a little bit thicker guy and looks like your typical inside linebacker. Now, on to your secondary. The secondary is where LSU added the most talent this year. As far as any position group, you added more freshmen that are expected to play, who are expected to play, and transfers to that secondary. You upgraded that group as far as talent goes and depth. And you already had guys in place that were coming along. Now you just have more of them, and you have established guys who've already proven themselves, like Mansour Delane. Delane came as a transfer out of Virginia Tech. He's a very experienced guy. He carries himself, when you see him in interviews on the field, he just carries himself like a leader. He looks to be a guy that LSU would count on and off the field. As far as on the field, he looks the part. He was one of LSU's best cover guys easily from what we saw in the spring. If you look at his game against Clemson last year, Clemson had some pretty talented receivers. You got a guy right now that's expected to go maybe in the first round and two freshmen behind him that came into their own, but they didn't play with Delane that much. They didn't throw his way often, and when they did, they didn't get great results. So Delane is likely going to start at one corner. The other corner is where it gets interesting, where you have our freshman in DJ Pickett, who has every tool you could ask for. He has the speed, the ball skills. He's legitimately 6'4". But you also have returning starter Ashton Stamps. And Stamps is one of those guys like the D tackles we mentioned. Stamps got thrown in early in 23. He got thrown in at cornerback. Ideally, you wouldn't want to have them play. You wouldn't want to have to play him at that stage in his career. But he took his lumps. He's gotten better. And one of the best aspects of his games, or the most improved aspects of his games, is his ability to play the ball. You saw a lot of times early in Stamps' career where he would be in position and he just couldn't quite play the ball. He couldn't make a play on it. Last year, you saw more of that. And he graded out pretty good as far as PFF is concerned, but you don't need grades to see that he was a much improved player as the year went on. And as you make more plays on the ball, he got more confident. And it's one of the most important traits for a cornerback. You got to be confident or you're not going to be what you're supposed to be. So we're looking at that close battle. Who's going to start? We don't know out of Pickett and Stamps, but both of them are going to play, and you got some good options either way it goes. So at cornerback, you're likely improved regardless. But you also have more depth at the position with Jakeem Jackson. Jakeem Jackson started for Florida last year before getting hurt early in the season. And I think he was a freshman at Florida then. So he took his red shirt. He'll come to LSU with at least 3 years to play. And Jackson is another one of those guys who has all the measurables. He has the speed. He has the height. He's a lengthy guy. He's 6 foot. So Jackson could figure in the starting, believe it or not, but he'll be a depth piece at the least. But again, like I said, at the defensive end position, it's the same thing here. You got guys that you're developing in the program, which is really how you want to build your program. And one of these key guys that I'm talking about is P.J. Woodland. Woodland came on, freshman out of Hattiesburg in 24. Woodland played some great snaps for LSU. He was one of your stickier guys in coverage. His biggest thing was he's so small. He was so light at 160 pounds that he just got pushed around. Your stronger receivers, your more experienced guys, he just bodied him up, pushed him around. So Woodland has the coverage ability. He's still listed at 165 on the LSU website. So let's just hope that they still have to update that, because we need Woodland around 180 to reach his potential. But he's a good cover guy. He'll come in a year more experienced and better off for it. At the safety position, another very improved position for LSU, A.J. Halsey, the best safety available in this spring window, one of the best players available. Halsey is proven. He's first team All Big 12. He's known as a run stopper type, but he had 5 picks. So he's not a one-dimensional player. He's very experienced, and it was a tight battle. It was a tough battle for LSU to get him, but they did, and they'll be a better team for it. We'll just take a quick look at some of Halsey's highlights. So here you see him just being a ball hawk. Eyes on the quarterback. He's pretty much a center fielder at this point. A.J. Halsey brings a wealth of experience. And not just experience, but playmaking ability. He's played long enough to where you're not going to fool him often offensively. He'll know what's going on, where he's supposed to be, and he'll also be an asset for some of your other players, your younger players, as far as getting guys lined up. So guys like Halsey, they'll make everybody in the secondary better. But don't forget about your guys that were here, like Jordan Gilbert. Gilbert had his ups and downs. Originally from Baton Rouge, went to Texas A&M, came back home to play for LSU last year. You got to give him credit because he played hurt. He never complained. He didn't make excuses. He had a shoulder injury that he was dealing with, and he just didn't look quite like himself. But he battled through it, and he gave LSU some good snaps. Gilbert to get another shot to start, but the competition will be fierce with so many guys that you've added, along with what you got coming back, and guys like Deshaun Spears. Spears got plenty of playing time as a true freshman out of Denham Springs last year. Spears looks the part. He's big, strong. His physique kind of reminds you of a young Eric Reed. But Spears, you can't move at full speed when you don't quite know what's going on. He was still trying to figure it out, and it was apparent. He wasn't the best as far as coming downhill in run support. But it's all part of the growth process, and we expect Spears to be to serve a bigger role on this defense this year. At the very least, he'll be more comfortable with the experience that he got last year. Another guy who will likely get some reps at safety is Tamarcus Cooley, uh, transfer out of North Carolina State. So Cooley played a lot of nickel. He's good. He's a good cover guy. He's probably more versatile than Halsey out of Houston. It's not quite as big, but as far as being able to cover, being able to tackle, move them around in the secondary, you can play Cooley at nickel and at safety. So that gives the Tigers a little flexibility. Baker can play around. He can make sure that he has his best guys in for the right situations. So looking at that secondary group, we got to think that they'll be better than last year. Your best guy last year is Zy Alexander. Your best cornerback last year. Alexander is gone, but you replace him with, like I said, all-world recruit in DJ Pickett, Jakeem Jackson, Mansour Delane. You're replacing one guy with three. You got to think, at the very least, out of those three, one of them is going to pan out, but Delane definitely looks like he'll take over a starting job. And even your guys that are coming back that played last year, they'll be a year older and a year stronger. And one of the more underrated parts of playing defense is knowing what's going on. So you got to remind yourself that this is Blake Baker's second year. So these are these players. This is also the player's second year in his system. So people have a better idea of his expectations, what their roles are, the calls, the terminology, everything will be more comfortable. So you got to expect that defense to improve, just as it improved for him in Missouri and last year at LSU. So it looks as though the Tigers will have a better defense than they did last year. But it doesn't matter until you hit the field. So August 30th, at Clemson isn't going to care about anything that I'm saying right now. Clemson is loaded with first-round draft picks, multiple on only the defensive line. Going beyond that, you got even more linebacker, cornerback. They're loaded. So we're going to find out pretty quickly about this defense when they see Clemson and Cade Klubnik, who he'll be battling out with Garrett Nussmeier as far as the best quarterback in the country. So we had some big news from a former Tiger last week. A kind of surprise announcement, and Tyrann Mathieu making the announcement that he was going to retire from the NFL. And if you've been following LSU, there's not much that I need to tell you about Tyrann Mathieu. You know, you've seen it. We've never seen a defensive player like him. And when you look at his size, it makes it even more impressive, the things that he was doing back in 2010 and 2011. Mathieu was a multiple-time Pro Bowler. At LSU, he's first-team All-American, Bednarik Award winner, Heisman Trophy finalist as a defensive back. That was the first time that had happened since Charles Woodson in 1997. The best word we can say to describe Mathieu is just different. He was different. He was unique. He was unlike anything we had ever seen, especially at the college level. We're talking about a guy with 14 forced fumbles. That's more than anybody in LSU's history. 11 forced fumbles. 11 forced fumbles. in his time at LSU. So he sets the record for forced fumbles, and he only played 2 years. He didn't even play his junior year, which kind of leads me to my next point about Matthew. We appreciate what he did on the field, but it was even more impressive to see him grow from that situation to overcome adversity. And we want to thank Matthew for how he handled himself as a man. And he set an example. And how he handled himself as a man will be more impactful for a lot of people than what he even did on the field. So, again, salute Tyrann Mathieu. Thanks for the memories. Enjoy your retirement. And we'll see you on that staff soon. For me, I'm going to let y'all go. We'll see y'all next week. Join me, Lewis Johnson, for LSU Live at the Voice of College Football.